The old man collapsed on the concrete, his trembling hands shielding his weary body. The bikers laughed with satisfaction, treating the act like cheap entertainment. No one around intervened. Only cold indifference surrounded him, but they had no idea. Just 60 minutes later, the roar of Special Forces vehicles would tear through that silence. Type respect if you believe those who sacrificed deserve to be honored. Samuel Sam Whitmore adjusted his faded veteran's cap as he pulled his 1970 Ford F-100 pickup into the gas station. The July heat shimmered off the cracked asphalt. At 80, Sam moved slowly, not from fear, but from wounds earned decades ago in jungles whose names most Americans could not pronounce. The truck, like Sam, had seen better days. Its blue paint had faded to gray in places with rust claiming territory along the wheel wells, but it ran reliably, stubbornly, just like the man who had owned it for 40 years. Sam eased himself from the driver's seat. His left knee, shattered by shrapnel in '71, protested with each step. He reached for his wallet, removed his veteran's discount card, and limped toward the station's convenience store. Near the air pump, 5 bikers lounged against their gleaming motorcycles. Young men with leather vests and bandanas, arms covered in tattoos never earned in combat. They watched Sam with restless eyes seeking entertainment. "Check out Grandpa's rust bucket," one called out. "Probably stole it from a museum." Sam ignored the comment, keeping his eyes forward, as he had done under far more dangerous provocations. He learned long ago that some battles were not worth fighting. Inside, he paid for his gas and a bottle of water. The young cashier barely looked up from her phone. Sam did not mind. Invisibility had advantages when your memories were as loud as his. Back at the pump, Sam carefully removed the gas cap and inserted the nozzle. His hands, once steady enough to disarm landmines, now trembled slightly, making simple tasks require concentration. He did not notice when a biker approached until the man was beside him, reeking of cigarettes and cheap cologne. "That thing even pass inspection?" the biker asked, running a tattooed finger along the truck's dented fender. "Looks like it should have been crushed 20 years ago." Sam looked up, meeting the younger man's gaze with clear blue eyes that had once sighted through rifle scopes in defense of freedoms this young man took for granted. "Still runs," Sam replied simply, returning his attention to the pump. Something about Sam's calm dismissal ignited anger in the biker. "Hey, I am talking to you, old man," he said, raising his voice. "This is not a retirement home parking lot." The other bikers drifted over, forming a loose semicircle around Sam. The gas station attendant glanced out the window, then deliberately looked away. "Just getting gas," Sam said evenly. "No trouble." "No trouble," another biker mocked, knocking the gas can from Sam's hand. Fuel splashed across the concrete. "Trouble is already here, Grandpa." Sam bent down slowly to retrieve the can. As he reached for it, the first biker shoved him hard, a casual, cruel gesture that sent the elderly man sprawling onto the concrete. Sam's palms scraped against the rough surface. His hips struck the ground with enough force to send a jolt of pain up his spine. Stars danced at the edges of his vision. The bikers laughed. That particular laugh of the young and strong, who have never tested their strength against worthy opponents. "Look at him," one snickered. "Cannot even take a little push." Around them, life continued. A woman hurried her child into their car. A truck driver looked away. A teenager recorded the scene, but made no move to help. Sam lay there for a moment, not from inability to rise, but from the crushing weight of realization. This was what he had fought for, the freedom for people to look away when the vulnerable needed help. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed himself up. A thin trickle of blood ran from his temple. He did not wipe it away. Instead, he straightened as much as his old injuries would allow, got back into his truck, and started the engine. The bikers moved aside, disappointed by his refusal to beg or cry out. As Sam pulled away, their mocking laughter followed him like shadows stretching in the late afternoon sun. What they could not see was the steel in his eyes, the same unflinching resolve that had carried him through firefights long before these young men were born. What they could not know was that Samuel Whitmore had never been a man who sought revenge, but he had always been a man who recognized when a line had been crossed. Sam drove through town with one hand pressed against his bleeding temple. Head wounds always bled dramatically, but more concerning was the dull ache in his hip inside. He pulled into Hank's auto shop, hoping to get the truck's engine checked. It had been running rough lately. Hank's son, Mike, glanced up from his computer, eyes widening slightly at the blood on Sam's face. "You okay, mister?" he asked without moving to help. "Fine," Sam replied. "Just wondered if you could take a look at my truck, making a strange noise. When I accelerate." Mike stepped outside, gave the old Ford a cursory glance, and shook his head. "Sorry, we do not work on vehicles this old. Parts are too hard to find, and honestly, it is not worth the investment." Sam nodded once, understanding the unspoken message. He was too old, his truck was too old, and neither was worth the effort. Without argument, he returned to his vehicle and drove away. As he navigated the familiar streets, memories washed over him like waves, sharp and relentless. He remembered the jungle heat of Laos where his Special Forces unit had moved silently through enemy territory to rescue PS. He recalled the weight of his wounded team leader across his shoulders as he carried him 3 miles to extraction, both of them bleeding but determined to see home again. The irony was not lost on him. He had fought for a country where he now felt like a stranger, bled for freedoms enjoyed by those who would mock an old man's vulnerability, sacrificed for a society that now looked through him as if he were already a ghost. At 80, he murmured to himself, "The worst pain is not physical. It is being forgotten." He drove to the small park at the center of town, finding a wooden bench beneath an oak tree. From his pocket, he removed a handkerchief and dabbed at the blood on his face. His left arm ached from the fall, and he could feel bruises forming along his hip. A young boy selling lemonade noticed Sam's condition. The child hesitated, then took a cup of lemonade and started walking toward the old veteran. His mother quickly called him back with a sharp whisper and shake of her head. Sam pretended not to notice the small rejection, though it stung more than his physical injuries. He had never expected gratitude for his service, but basic human kindness should not require extraordinary circumstances. A group of teenagers passed by laughing among themselves. "Check it out. Zombie apocalypse survivor," one joked loud enough for Sam to hear. His friend snickered. "More like Civil War veteran. Think he knew Lincoln." Sam absorbed their mockery with stoic silence. From his wallet, he carefully extracted a yellowed photograph, handling it with reverence. The photo showed 8 men in jungle fatigues, arms around each other's shoulders, standing before a helicopter. Despite the dirt and exhaustion evident on their faces, each man smiled with the intensity of those who know exactly how precious a moment of safety can be. Sam was on the far right, younger and stronger, but with the same clear eyes. On the back, faded handwriting listed 8 names and a simple phrase: "Wissy Team, the ones who came back." Behind the photo, Sam kept something he had not looked at in over 40 years. A small card with a phone number and the words, "Emergency contact only Special Forces Group 72. Throughout decades of nightmares, the deaths of his wife and son, through every hardship, Sam had never used that number. Pride perhaps, or the belief that a man handles his own troubles. But today, something had broken inside him. Not his body, which had endured far worse, but a certain faith in his fellow Americans. A belief that under surface differences, a basic respect existed for those who had served. From his pocket, Sam withdrew his old flip phone. His fingers, stiff from age and his recent fall, trembled as he punched in the number from the card. He expected nothing. 40 years was a lifetime. The number would be disconnected. The people behind it, long retired or dead, but something compelled him to try. Perhaps the same instinct that had kept him alive in combat when others fell. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, crisp, alert, professionally neutral. Verification code. Sam had not expected an answer. For a moment, he could not speak. Then, reaching back through decades of memory, he recalled the response protocol. "Whiskey 72 Delta," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Samuel Whitmore." A pause on the other end, then with unmistakable recognition. "Stand by for confirmation. Sergeant Major Whitmore." Sam sat very still on the park bench, the phone pressed to his ear as another voice came on the line. Older, authoritative, with the unmistakable tone of command. "Sam Whitmore. It has been a long time." "Too long, Colonel," Sam replied, suddenly transported back to another life. "What is your situation, Sergeant Major?" Sam took a deep breath. "I need the team, sir." No questions followed. No requests for explanations. Only 3 words that made something long dormant within Sam's chest unfurl like a flag catching the wind. Help is coming. 200 meters away at the Veterans of Special Forces Association headquarters, Colonel James Harrington, 75 and retired for 20 years, activated a protocol that had not been used in over a decade. Whiskey Team Emergency Assembly, he announced over a secure line. Samuel Whitmore has made contact. Within minutes, phones rang in 6 different locations across 3 states. Men in their 60s and 70s received the call. None asked questions. None made excuses. They simply acknowledged and acted. In a suburban garage in Pennsylvania, retired Master Sergeant David Reeves opened a cabinet that his grandchildren had never seen unlocked. Inside was a black tactical vest, still maintained, still ready. In a Virginia fishing cabin, former Captain Michael Jenkins abandoned his afternoon plans without explanation to his puzzled fishing buddies. In a Maryland medical office, Dr. Thomas Wilson, once the unit's medic, told his receptionist to cancel his appointments due to a family emergency. From different directions, different lives, they converged, drawn by a bond forged in fire decades ago. Meanwhile, in the park, Sam remained on his bench. The bleeding from his temple had stopped, but exhaustion from the day's events weighed heavily on him. His eyes drifted closed occasionally, not in sleep, but in the half-alert rest that combat veterans never fully unlearn. The bikers from the gas station had by coincidence chosen the park as their next destination. They roared in on their motorcycles, disrupting the peace with deliberate noise, performing stunts near the playground that sent mothers hurrying their children away. They had not noticed Sam yet. He made no effort to hide, nor did he draw attention to himself. He simply waited, a skill he had mastered in jungles and mountains far from home. The first black SUV arrived 48 minutes after Sam's call. It entered the park with deliberate speed, its government plates and American flag emblem the only indications it was not a typical family vehicle. 3 minutes later, a second SUV arrived from the opposite direction. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. They positioned themselves in a perfect perimeter around the park's central area, cutting off easy exit routes. It was a containment pattern Sam recognized immediately. He had helped develop it during operations in Southeast Asia. The bikers noticed the vehicles with mild curiosity at first until the doors opened simultaneously with synchronized precision that only comes from years of coordinated operations. From each vehicle emerged men who defied easy categorization. They were not young, but they moved with purpose and confidence that belied their gray hair. Each wore a simple black t-shirt bearing the Special Forces insignia. Each carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who had faced death and retained the absolute certainty of who they were. Without speaking to each other, they converged on Sam's position. The park fell strangely silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Children stopped playing. The bikers, sensing something significant unfolding, straightened from their lounging positions. Colonel Harrington reached Sam first. Though decades had passed since they had served together, he dropped to one knee before his former comrade, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes. "Sergeant Major Whitmore," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent park. "Whiskey Team reporting as requested." Sam's stoic expression cracked slightly, a shimmer of emotion in his blue eyes. "You did not all have to come. All of us or none of us," replied David Reeves. That was always the rule. Thomas Wilson immediately began examining Sam's injuries. "Who did this?" he asked quietly, the calm question carrying an undertone that made bystanders step back involuntarily. Sam gestured slightly toward the bikers, who now stood frozen, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Colonel Harrington rose and turned toward them. His posture remained relaxed, but something in his eyes made the leader of the bikers swallow hard. "Those men," Harrington announced loud enough for everyone to hear, laid hands on Medal of Honor recipient Sergeant Major Samuel Whitmore. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering crowd. Smartphones appeared as people began recording. "He is lying," one biker said, though his voice lacked conviction. "That is just some old bum." Michael Jenkins stepped forward. From around his neck, he removed what appeared to be dog tags, but as he held them up, the distinctive medal attached to them became visible, the Medal of Honor. In 1971, Jenkins stated, "Sergeant Major Whitmore led a classified operation to rescue 14 American PS. When their extraction was compromised, he held off more than 30 enemy combatants, allowing the wounded to reach safety. Despite being wounded 3 times himself, he was the last man to board the helicopter. People in the crowd began to whisper among themselves. Several removed their hats in respect. 6 men came home to their families because of him. Jenkins continued. I was one of them. The biker's bravado crumbled visibly. One took a step back. Another dropped his gaze to the ground. Thomas Wilson helped Sam to his feet. Despite his age and the day's ordeal, Sam stood straight, the military bearing returning to his posture as if the years had fallen away. We do not want trouble, the lead biker stammered, suddenly aware of the numerous witnesses recording the scene. But you were happy to cause it, Colonel Harrington replied, his voice level, but carrying an unmistakable edge. You were willing to hurt an elderly man for your amusement. By now, local news had caught wind of what was happening. A reporter and cameraman pushed through the growing crowd. Police vehicles pulled up alongside the SUVs. One of the bikers, younger than the others, broke ranks and approached Sam directly. His face had drained of color. Sir, he said, voice cracking. My grandfather was in Vietnam. If he were alive to see what I did today, he could not finish the sentence. Sam studied the young man's face for a long moment. Then honor him by becoming someone he would be proud of, he said finally. From the last SUV, a uniformed military officer emerged carrying a polished wooden case. He approached Sam with formal precision and opened it to reveal a replacement Medal of Honor. Your original was stolen from your home in 1989. The officer explained. The Department of Defense recently authorized this replacement. We have been trying to locate you, sir. Sam stared at the medal and felt the weight of memory press against his chest. His team surrounded him now, just as they had in that jungle clearing decades ago. I never wore it for the recognition, Sam said quietly. We know, Colonel Harrington replied. That is exactly why you deserved it. The small church in town filled beyond capacity that evening. Word had spread rapidly, first through social media, then local news. The story of a forgotten hero found after decades of quiet anonymity resonated deeply. Sam sat in the front pew, uncomfortable with the attention. His whiskey team surrounded him. These men who had dropped everything to come to his aid, forming a protective honor guard of gray-haired warriors. The town mayor, hastily organizing a recognition ceremony, spoke with genuine emotion. For 50 years, Sergeant Major Whitmore has lived among us. He has pumped his own gas, fixed his own roof, shopped in our stores, and we never recognized the hero in our midst. Sam listened with his eyes downcast, embarrassed by praise he had never sought. When it was his turn to speak, he rose slowly and faced the gathered crowd. I did not call my team because I wanted recognition, he said, his voice steady. I called because I needed to remember that there was a time when people stood by each other, when no one got left behind. He paused, looking at the faces before him. Many of the same people who had looked away at the gas station, who had hurried past him on streets for years without a second glance. I do not blame anyone for not knowing who I was. That was my choice to live quietly. But I do ask that you look more carefully at the elderly man struggling with his groceries or the homeless veteran on the street corner. Their stories may not be in history books, but they matter. The young boy who had wanted to offer him lemonade broke free from his mother's grasp and approached Sam with a small bouquet of wild flowers. My dad is a soldier too, the boy said, offering the flowers. He said, real heroes do not always wear uniforms. Sam accepted the flowers with equal solemnity. Your dad is right, he said. The bravest people I know wore their courage on the inside where it counts most. After the ceremony, a town committee formed, pledging to establish a small monument in the park, not just for Sam, but for all veterans who had returned to civilian life without fanfare. The proposed inscription, honor never fades. Respect those who served. The bikers approached Sam before he left the church. Their leader, subdued and genuinely remorseful, offered not just an apology, but a promise. Our club will provide escort services for veteran funerals and events from now on, sir.